If we knew more about our sleep, what would we do differently? Would we go to bed at a consistent time or take steps to reduce interruptions to our sleep? With Sleep Score, Apple Watch measures your bedtime consistency, interruptions, and sleep duration. Then, every morning it combines these factors into an easy-to-understand score from 1 to 100. So you'll know how to take the quality of your sleep from okay to very high. Know your sleep score with Apple Watch. iPhone 11 or later required.
Berkeley Castle stands above the edge of the Severn Vale, much as it has for centuries. Its heavy Norman walls rising from the hillside above the small Gloucestershire town below. Even from a distance, it looks older than many English castles, not simply in age, but in character. Nothing about it feels decorative. The stone still carries the shape of a fortress built for uncertain times. The castle lies close to the River Severn in western Gloucestershire, not far from the old Welsh borderlands that troubled Norman England for generations after the conquest. The landscape there opens into wide low ground beside the estuary, though the castle itself occupies higher land above the surrounding fields and roads. From the upper walls, the view stretches across the vale toward the river, and in poor weather the whole area can seem enclosed beneath drifting mist from the water. A fortress was established here not long after 1066, originally built from timber upon a great earth mound raised above the settlement. Norman castles appeared across England rapidly after the conquest, securing roads, river crossings, and centres of authority. Berkeley formed part of that wider network. It guarded movement through the Severn region, while also serving as a visible reminder of who now controlled the land. The earliest structures disappeared long ago, though the earthworks beneath the surviving castle still belong to that first phase. During the 12th century, the timber fortifications were rebuilt in stone under Robert Fitzharding, ancestor of the Berkeley family, who remained connected with the castle for generations afterwards. Much of the core structure visible today dates from that medieval rebuilding. The great circular shell keep still crowns the motte, enclosed by thick defensive walls that follow the shape of the mound beneath. Unlike many castles reduced to fragments after the Civil War, Berkeley survived largely intact. Alterations were made across the centuries as military needs faded and domestic life became more important, though traces of each period remained visible within the structure itself. Archaeological studies and structural surveys have identified blocked stairways, rebuilt chambers, medieval drainage systems, and repeated alterations to windows and interiors. In some sections, Norman stonework survives almost untouched. Elsewhere, the walls reveal Tudor and later modifications, layered over the original fortress. Excavations within parts of the grounds uncovered pottery, domestic waste deposits, and evidence of workshops connected to everyday life inside the castle walls. These discoveries are less dramatic than tales of kings and ghosts, though they often reveal far more about a place than legend does. Castles were not occupied only by nobles and soldiers. Large communities lived and worked inside them. Kitchens operated constantly. Servants carried water and supplies through the courtyards. Fires burned day and night during winter months. The castle functioned as a small enclosed world. Berkeley's history became inseparable from one event in particular during the autumn of 1327, when the deposed King Edward II was brought here as a prisoner. By then, England had entered a period of political instability. Edward's reign had weakened through military failures, factional disputes, and growing opposition among powerful nobles. Eventually, Queen Isabella and Roger Mortimer moved openly against him. Forced to abdicate in favour of his son, Edward was transferred between several places of confinement before arriving at Berkeley Castle under guard. The historical record surrounding his final days remains uncertain. Edward died within the castle on the 21st of September 1327, though exactly how he died has been debated ever since. The famous story claims he was murdered using a red-hot poker in order to avoid visible injury upon the body. The account became one of the best-known tales in English medieval history, though modern historians approach it cautiously. Contemporary evidence is limited, and the more elaborate versions appear mainly in later chronicles written after the event itself. Some historians believe Edward was suffocated. Others argue the precise cause of death cannot now be known with confidence. What survives beyond dispute is simpler than the legends that followed. A former king died here while imprisoned under guard, and the circumstances surrounding that death remained politically dangerous for years afterwards. Visitors today are shown a chamber long associated with Edward's imprisonment. Whether it truly served as his final room cannot be proven with certainty, though the tradition attached itself to that part of the castle centuries ago and never disappeared. The room itself is small, enclosed and deeply shadowed beneath old stonework overhead. Even without its history, it leaves an impression. Stories surrounding the castle began accumulating not long after Edward's death. One of the oldest local traditions claimed that cries from the murdered king echoed far beyond the walls during the night, carrying across the town and surrounding countryside. There is no historical evidence supporting the story, though it survived in local folklore for many generations. Medieval people viewed the violent death of a king very differently from modern audiences. Such an act carried a religious as well as political weight. Rumours naturally followed. Other traditions emerged gradually over time. Tales of stains that could never be fully cleaned from the stone became attached to the room associated with Edward's death, much like similar stories found elsewhere in Britain, at locations connected to murder or execution. Hidden passages and concealed chambers also entered local folklore, though castles often encouraged such speculation naturally. Thick walls conceal staircases unexpectedly. Corridors end abruptly. Alterations from different centuries leave behind strange irregularities within the structure. By the 19th century, Berkeley Castle had become firmly associated with ghost stories, as Victorian fascination with medieval England intensified. Gothic fiction, antiquarian writing, and popular ghost literature all contributed to the castle's reputation. Yet many of the quieter accounts connected with Berkeley are more restrained than later paranormal entertainment might suggest. Several former staff members and guides have spoken over the years about discomfort experienced while working alone inside certain parts of the building after visitors had left. In most cases, the accounts remain simple. A sense of unease inside particular rooms. Footsteps heard nearby when the corridors appeared empty. The feeling that somebody had entered a space behind them, only to discover nobody there at all. One account, often repeated locally, concerns sounds near to the old stairways close to the upper chambers. According to later retellings, a member of staff believed somebody was moving slowly across the corridor behind them after closing hours. The footsteps continued long enough for the witness to stop and turn, expecting another employee or late visitor. The passage remained empty. Another visitor later described pausing alone near one of the inner staircases while much of the castle stood quiet during the afternoon. They reportedly became aware of movement nearby, consistent with somebody climbing toward them from below. Again, they stepped aside, assuming somebody was approaching through the narrow stairwell. Nobody appeared. The sound stopped abruptly. None of these reports provide strong evidence of paranormal activity in themselves. Old stone buildings produce echoes and shifting acoustics naturally, particularly in enclosed spaces crossed by narrow passages and uneven floors. Still, experiences of this kind continue to appear in accounts connected with the castle, and the consistency of certain details keeps the stories alive. Visual sightings are reported less frequently, though occasional claims describe shadow-like figures seen briefly near doorways or upper corridors before disappearing from view. Most such reports lack detailed documentation and survive mainly through retelling. The same is true of claims surrounding sudden coldness or oppressive silence within particular rooms. Such experiences are difficult to measure objectively, especially in medieval interiors, where temperature changes rapidly between enclosed spaces. Berkeley Castle has inevitably attracted paranormal investigators and television programs over the years. Some modern material surrounding the castle becomes exaggerated quickly once filtered through ghost hunting entertainment. Dramatic narration often replaces careful history. Torture stories grow more elaborate with repetition. Rumours harden into supposed fact. The reality is quieter than that. What gives Berkeley its atmosphere is not sensationalism, but continuity. The castle stands largely complete, with real political events remain part of the structure rather than isolated ruins behind barriers. The same walls that enclosed Edward II continue to surround the inner ward today. Centuries of alteration changed the castle gradually, without erasing its earlier shape. Walking through the passages now, the building never feels separated neatly into historical periods. Norman stonework stands beside Tudor additions. Medieval corridors open into later domestic chambers. The past survives there in layers rather than isolated fragments. Outside the walls, the surrounding Severn landscape carried its own older traditions and superstitions, long before modern ghost stories appeared. In earlier centuries, people living near the estuary often regarded drifting fog, strange sounds over the water, and sudden changes in weather with suspicion. Death omens connected to birds and animals were woven deeply into local folklore across Western England. Owls calling near inhabited buildings, dogs refusing certain doorways, or unusual silence before storms were all treated seriously at various times. Beliefs concerning violent death also shaped how places like Berkeley were remembered. Medieval England held strong traditions surrounding restless souls, improper burial, and spiritual disturbance following murder. Whether or not people genuinely believed Edward II haunted the castle is difficult to know. What mattered more was the idea that certain events left mark upon a place that time alone could not entirely remove. That feeling lingers at Berkeley more strongly than the ghost stories themselves. Standing inside the inner ward today, looking upward toward the great circular keep above the motte, it becomes easier to understand how little the essential structure has changed since the 12th century. Soldiers once crossed these same courtyards carrying weapons and supplies. Messengers arrived through the gatehouse, bearing news from London during periods of rebellion and uncertainty. Somewhere within those walls, a king waited under guard, while his fate was argued elsewhere by men pursuing power. The castle does not feel theatrical. It feels old in the truest sense of the word. Layers of history remain pressed into the stonework, without needing embellishment added afterwards. Thank you for listening to Ghost Tales by the Fireside. If you enjoy these stories, you can support the podcast over on buymeacoffee.com/Ghost Tales. You can find everything and more episodes at ghosttales.co.uk.
All new drinks are now at McDonald's, with refreshers like the strawberry watermelon refresher and the mango pineapple refresher with popping boba, to crafted sodas like the Sprite Berry Blast with berry flavors and cold foam. Who knew ice cold drinks could be so fire? Try them all now at McDonald's.
Refreshers contain caffeine. Copyright 2026, The Coca-Cola Company. Sprite is a registered trademark of The Coca-Cola Company.